Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the work session of the Mayor and Council of the Town of Berlin. It is Monday, March 25th, 2024. We're joined this evening by two of our Planning Commission members. Some others may join us along the way to discuss a letter that was received by the Town of Berlin on March 6th regarding the Worcester County Comprehensive Plan update. There is a copy of the letter in the packet. This evening, we need to discuss a few questions that are in paragraph 3. The first question is, are the existing growth areas adequate to provide for infill development and any additional growth anticipated by the town? The next question is, are these areas too large or in the wrong place or in the wrong place? The third question is, are they consistent with the current and any proposed municipal growth element for Berlin? And the last question is, are there any additional areas of focus that we need to work together to address? So since the letter asked for a response to Worcester County within 45 days, we felt that a joint discussion between some of the Planning Commission members and the Mayor and Council would be the most adequate way to respond to the letter. So I guess we should start with question 1, which is, are there existing growth areas, are the existing growth areas adequate to provide for infill development and any additional growth anticipated by the town? To the two of you, we're joined by Ron Cassio and Matt Stower, both members of our Planning Commission. Do either of you have any guidance on that question or its response?
Well, when we start our own comprehensive plan review, usually what we've done, and I think what I've done on other planning commissions, is you start at the beginning and you go through the whole thing, chapter by chapter, page by page, word by word sometimes. We determined this time that we would start with the growth element because in the last couple of years, we have heard our representatives, you guys, concerned about the growth that's going on all around Berlin that is infecting us at the moment. And through a lot of discussion amongst the Planning Commission and other folks in town and you folks privately, we have determined that we should not annex any more properties. I think that was kind of outlined by when we had DeRuth Adani here, who stated that for a small town to function as a small town, size matters. And usually about a mile square is what determines if a town can function as such. It's walking and biking distances. It's those kind of physical scale things that allow a town like us to feel like we do, to be who we are. And we're already about a mile and a third in size, so we're already a little too big for that generalization of size. We've been inundated with attempts to annex properties on our outskirts. With one was 208 units on 45 acres. Nothing like what any of us, and I'm speaking as a town for the most part, think is good for town. So what we intend to do is redraw our town growth area lines. If you look at the map, we're surrounded by the county's appointed growth areas. We don't like those. We'd like to move any growth that we have inbound, as they stated, infill. To answer that one question, yes, I think we do have enough areas inside of town to infill. We don't need to physically expand anymore. So that's where, as a planning commission, we want to go to the county and say, we don't really agree with these growth areas that you've put upon us. If we're going to accept any growth, we're going to bring it inbound. We're going to come up with our own growth areas. And we have identified a couple of them so far. And we need to go to the county and stipulate that because they're doing their comp plan. They want to continue those growth areas. We want to tell them, no, we'll invite people to our party. We're not looking for anybody else to invite people to our party. And we wanted to get the blessing from the mayor and council before we went there. We want your backing.
Well, it seems like we both might be working in the same direction when we send this letter addressing the existing growth areas, their adequacy for infill development, and any additional growth anticipated by the town. It sounds like your belief, and Matt, if it's different than yours or different than the
It's the same
consensus
idea.
of the
The
group.
planning commission is
Right.
basically unanimously about stopping
So then
expansion.
maybe the answer to the question in the planning commission's view would be that the existing growth areas are adequate for infill development, and we don't believe there's any additional growth outside of the current boundaries that is needed.
That would be incorrect, because what they refer to there, they're referring to the growth areas outside of our boundaries.
Right, but by answering the question and saying that we believe that the current municipal boundaries are
Yes,
adequate.
yes. Our current, basically what we like to do is draw a line, the existing, town boundaries and say, that's it, folks. That's the Berlin Wall. That's where we stop. That's where other things begin.
So, Ron, you talked about having identified infill areas. Could you share that?
Well, look at industrial. Look at the ice plant. Okay, a 3-story brick building that sits there essentially unused in a neighborhood that you could replace that 3-story industrial building with a 3-story brick apartment building. I don't think much people in the neighborhood would find a problem with that.
Considering they just did housing right behind the ice plant, like right over by Arctic, yeah.
Right, and those people can easily walk to town
Yeah.
and support local businesses. They need no parking.
The other area I would suggest is maybe where the grain towers are.
That is even
I'd love to
better.
see that.
There's a 70-foot tall structure there.
Yeah.
Make it 40-foot tall and put a bunch of people in there.
Well, I think Easton or somebody redeveloped the grain mills into housing, which was pretty cool. I mean,
There are a lot of
back when it was
places.
listed, I sent it to the
It could be very
railroad.
cool.
There are a number of places.
Is
That
that
would-
Maryland?
I think in Easton, I have the old article, I'll send it, but I mean, they converted the silos into apartments.
And people ask, well, how do you accomplish that? How do you get an apartment building there? Well, you upzone it. You make it to the point where the property's value as it's upzoned is kind of a no-brainer. If I own the property and I don't want to build a multi-million-dollar project, I'll sell it to somebody who does. So, we could simply by upzoning incentivize that type of use in town where there are properties that are totally underutilized. Some of them aren't utilized at all, like the grain towers are nothing right now.
Yeah. just
You know?
like-
You look at this county map and where they've identified these areas. Let's say we were to annex, the county would just move that boundary back further. And then you got sprawl, and then you should change the.
Salisbury was one time as big as we are. New York City was one time as big as we are.
Exactly.
We just need to build the Berlin Wall and say no. That's
So-
the end.
Ron, I have a question here. So let's, so you're suggesting essentially that green belt around the town, correct? In a way?
If we, the county, when they go through their comp plan, and I was on the Worcester County Planning Commission 20-some years ago when we did that, Jay, you know all about it. The county does a population projection. And they basically say, oh, all these people are coming here, how can we accommodate them? Where do we put them? And as a planner, at that time, a citizen planner, it made sense. Put them where you have the infrastructure, right? Put them on the outside of town. Until I moved to the town of Vernon and lived here, did I realize that kills small towns.
Yeah.
That really does.
So with that, I don't mean to cut you off, but so let's just look at this map here. And I'm going to take an example. I don't know, Old Ocean City Boulevard there, where it comes in at the triangle there on the top left. So, and this is all just me imagining here. Do you think it would be better for us to talk to the county? Because if this is the growth area and they put, what is that? That's a growth area. Let's just say, not to stir anything, we'll just say a hotel. Right up there at the corner at the end of the town. Obviously, a hotel right there, we have no control. So should we, or should the planning commission, I guess what I'm asking is there a room for a buffer area? Or some sort of,
The buffer would be,
or is there one?
essentially, historically, the people came to the planning commission with proposals for annexation, and they said, this is your growth area. We're doing just what everybody says we should do. And the town, up until this point, I think, always welcomed that kind of thing. I think the politics here in town, both politicians and the citizens, have had enough of that. And so what you do is...
Well, I think not to cut you off, but I think that it goes to the point of the work that the planning commission is doing right now.
Right.
Which is updating a document that was done in 2010. I mean, it needed to be updated. And thank you all for the work that you're doing on that, but I think it's going to reflect who we are today and what we see ourselves being in the next 10 years.
Right.
Well, what do we see ourselves being in the next 10 years? And Ron, I understand what you're saying about growth and sprawl and remaining this quaint little town, but as operating costs of this town of Berlin continue to goes up, how do we manage that? How do we manage that without an increase in property tax, which is going to impact really negatively on some of our households? We do not want to be a town where the folks that live here can't afford to live here.
None of us want that.
Right. So 2 points. One, Jack, to your first comment about a hotel going where Worcester County would be. Without our sewer and water, they would have an extremely hard time of ever building in a non-annex area. I don't even think it could be possible for a hotel to go there.
So then doesn't that rely, doesn't it just rely then on us?
It relies on us having
If it's something you cannot build it without.
we just say, we're not going to sewer it.
Just say
But-
that.
And what happens then is, all they can get out of it is what they're zoned in the county, which is, let's just take one of the farm outside, Abbott Farm, right? 75 acres. They could put, if we sewered them, they could put hundreds in there. If we didn't, they would get 5 at best. That's all. I think we would all rather see 5. We see 2 of them out there now, close by. It looks a whole lot better than, McMansion subdivisions.
So the planning commission is the buffer.
Well, the other side, hold
Yes.
on, I think it goes to
You
what
guys.
Ron said a moment ago, which is folks come in here, and we don't want folks coming and saying that they're following the rules when the views may be different.
Right.
So the documents that we have that we publicize should be somewhat of a guiding principle. And we rely on those to be updated, we rely on those to be able to reflect who we are and where we're going. So with that, I think it's the right thing to do for folks that are looking to acquire property or move to Berlin, to show them exactly
It's only
what
fair.
that
It's
looks
only
like.
fair.
Yeah.
Right, right.
It's not right to have them come through the process to just say
Right.
no.
Right. And to answer your question, Dean, we have that concerns about taxes too, but, what happens essentially is when you sprawl out like that, think of the added miles that the trash truck has to go
Yes.
to service those, that the police, that the pipes, the lines. The further you go out, the more expensive it becomes to service those areas. If we bring those inside, like at the ice house or at the grain mills, if you had 40 people, 40 apartments at one of those sites, the trash truck only has to go one place. The police, everything's close by. Things are less expensive to service when they're in town than when they go out of town.
Do you still have that document or the video? Remember the one that we were looking at about like the density?
You sent that, and we should all watch that together.
I'll see if I can move.
I think I can find it. And it answers your question, like, the tax dollars are way more beneficial to town when they're compacted in town
Yes.
than when they go out. And I think we should really watch
Single
that.
family home are losers.
Losers.
I think
It
that should
should
be.
cost you more than they brought in.
And the other side is we need to
I'm
think
glad
about
you feel that way
how,
about us on TV.
we need to think about how we overcome the affordability side that Vice President Burrell brings up, because it does resonate through our strategic planning process that folks are concerned about affordability, which rightfully so. And I think if I got one thing out of Drew's visit was, I think in Atlanta, they have, and we've talked about this, some of us, In Atlanta, they have a nonprofit or something that helps cover that additional tax burden for folks as they age and fixed incomes, as well as folks that need to be assisted due to income levels. And it's a nonprofit, so it gives people a pathway to be able to donate. But I think that understanding that, as you said, the cost of doing business does go up a little bit, but how do we make that manageable?
But I think, I don't think that what I'm about to say is steering away from where we are right now, but my thought on this whole growth plan in the growth area, I don't think that whomever looked at this was true, or planned this, was truly taking Berlin into consideration when they think about what our existing infrastructure looks like. And when we annex these locations and add these places, the thought is, from a certain perspective, well, there goes your tax base, it broadens. But in all actuality, what really happens is our work area spreads.
Yes.
And our manpower remains the same, but we're servicing more. So we're required to put in infrastructure all the way out on Cedar Lane. We're required to put trash trucks and things all the way out on the outskirts of Ocean City Boulevard. And really and truly, if you shift perspective just a tiny bit and look at where we sit right now as far as what we're working with, we can't afford to grow out there. We don't have the capability, let's be real, to even maintain what we have without the worry of where's the cost gonna come from. But going out there to Liberty Town Road and those places, even if we were to, and I hope this never comes up again, but even if we were to consider annexing Brailletown, that in itself, just that little stretch of Flower Street, the cost in annexing that would be astronomical, because you're looking at sewer, you're looking at trash, roads, just the cost, and it's gonna mount with all of this growth. So staying inside of what we already have, from that perspective, from our pockets, makes the most sense. as
Just
far as
dollars and cents wise, it
Yeah.
makes sense.
In all fairness to the county though, this map was done a long time ago.
Sure.
The mindset was completely different,
Exactly.
costs were completely different. And
But we still had the
We
same
didn't have
infrastructure
Sussex
back then.
County breathing down our neck at the time, so
Correct.
now we
it was
just
like,
look
okay,
north and
that-
see what
that
happens.
looks good, but now it doesn't make
Yeah.
sense, so we just
Yeah.
need to tell them that.
I think that's also why, to your point, they're updating it.
Yeah.
So, and they've respectfully asked for our input, so I think that it's nice that we're having these conversations now. Regarding question one, do the mayor and council remain consistent with the planning commission's view that existing municipal boundaries are adequate to provide infill development and no additional growth areas are anticipated at this time?
Yes, but I have questions on questions 2 and 3.
Well, we haven't gotten to
Yeah,
the three.
I mean, yes, the infill is what is the.
So we're
spot.
comfortable with that. Okay, now let's move to question 2. All right, question 2 is, are these areas too large or in the wrong place?
I would say that they're asking to, on this map, right?
Right.
I mean, I think, my personal, see what the group says, that Liberty Town Road, the Cedar Lane Road, that chunk to the far left, or I guess that whatever direction it is, that should go, I would think, in my opinion.
So
That's pretty-
Liberty Town, the south portion of Liberty Town,
to Cedar Lane Road, I think that that's, to me, not a viable.
we'll cancel that. Are you saying that whole section south of Liberty Town Road?
From here to here, right, where the,
We would be looking at the Kate, can you move your cursor?
The largest square.
So-
Yeah, large square, yeah.
Yep,
So those and the parcels directly below it?
that, I think that's,
Let's see the town.
That's way
Pretty
off.
easy
Yeah,
decision.
that's.
Yeah.
There you go, golf course?
yeah, isn't that Bay Club?
Yeah,
Some of them even in play.
yeah.
Well, not all of
Yeah.
it's Bay Club,
Yeah.
not all of that, yeah.
don't think so.
Well, either way, it's out.
So
yeah.
Steve's recommendation.
do you recommend,
That's too much.
do you think moving further in the westerly direction down, Broad Street is what we would like to see, or no? Cut it off, as the planning commission has said.
Well, so, I mean, as an example, when we had a guy come in and wanted to develop the property, he wanted to annex it, and his argument was that it was within the county growth area.
Right.
And so his statement was, you guys need to be on the same page, you should be developing this. this is your per square footage per lot, so I can put 240 units. And he just was, called us foolish in meeting with him because we didn't want to develop it on that single lane road for putting 240
Well,
houses.
that is crazy.
Right, anyone who lives here would go, there's no way you can do that. And so, when we look at that entire stretch, I don't know how you annex it for a large development versus a county where it's, 5 estate lots on a 12-acre piece of property. And everything's 2.5 acres and it's not such a burden to anything.
So when you guys look at this, see, my thought was, before Steve had said the large plot on Liberty Town and down towards Cedar Lane, I thought even going inward where the bend is in this thing, you see what I'm saying? Even that smaller little
Over here.
crazy spot.
Well, I think that if I understand the planning commission's view, or the two members that are here, you say stop it at the municipal
Stop at the
boundary.
municipal.
Yeah, that's what I was
There's
thinking too.
no discussion
like,
beyond that.
Erase all of that.
Is
That's what
that
I
the view?
I think we're having a
Let me ask
discussion
you
we
one
don't need to have.
question. Ron, if you were to rezone these, well, I don't think we can rezone it, the county can, but these other parcels to a state, wouldn't that solve the problem?
It would solve it would solve that problem of large lot subdivisions.
But we don't want to connect the sewer.
If I
No.
can, as long as we don't sewer it, as long as you guys, as long as mayor and council, you're in charge of where we put sewer, as long as you say no, that's where it stops. Now, one of the ways to make that permanent, because mayor and councils change, ideas change. One of the ways that I think we should work towards that, and it's already happening, is if, say these parcels outside of town, 10, 20, 50 acres, the people who own those think, well, geez, I can make some money here. If we don't sewer it, they get 5 at best, okay? We could work with property owners to get agricultural or forestry easements on those properties. They may not be as much as, they could get with 5 subdivisions. But there are people, I can tell you right now, there are 3 parcels on Evans Road that have just been signed in perpetuity farms. And these people said, we don't care how much it's worth. We want this to stay the same. And we do too. So we could work with the county and the property owners and the other entities that fund these various easements to permanently put easements on these properties. It doesn't matter who the mayor and council is then. It doesn't matter what the issue is. Berlin stays the same size.
So with
What
this,
about adding a zoning level to our current zoning structure?
Well, we would have to annex it and then rezone it.
But we currently don't have the zoning that fits. We would need to create.
We would have to create
That's what I'm saying.
we could create
Urban growth boundary
we could
designation.
create, a farm zoning. We
And
could ag
ask the
zoning.
county to rezone it.
Exactly. Well, we could,
Yeah.
what we could, the tough thing about annexing it ourselves is the people won't want to be annexed.
Right.
So we just don't sewer them. It's, as long as we can hold that line. They only get 5 at best.
So then maybe the response to the questions, are the areas too large or in the wrong place? We would say that the current identified growth areas transition to a protected, immediately adjacent to the municipal limits, transition to a protected easement or a forestry
We
easement.
would view them as conservation areas.
But the landowner has to be willing to.
Well, the landowner could go for 5, or they could,
Yeah.
we could work with them to try to find ag money.
Right.
And a lot of those people, it's generations on the same farm.
right.
The people in the Bishopville area are going crazy with what's happening up there north of them. And they're dying to get easements on their farms because they've seen enough and they know what it does to their communities. And I think we've seen enough here.
So the easements would outlive, I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off, Jack. The easements would outlive these bodies and your body?
In perpetuity.
Okay, I'm just making,
No, that's,
You know what I'm saying?
And the current property owner.
Yeah.
It's gonna be in-
doesn't matter who
I'm
owns the
just
property.
making sure
When you buy
because I
that
mean-
property, it's deed restricted. This is all it is.
I think that's the smartest route.
And we have help in the county and other entities to pull that off. It's happening right now. It's just, it's working its way towards the Berlin Wall. We just,
Exactly.
I don't know if we want.
So,
Sorry.
Well, the
This is a work session, it's a little loose.
the Berlin Wall consists of trees
Right.
and farmland.
Municipal
The
boundary.
green wall.
Exactly. It's a green wall.
It's out of the 80s, I can think of So, let me,
Don't make a joke,
let
y'all.
me just ask this question that I wanted to get out. So, and I don't want to jump the gun here or misinterpret. So essentially, am I understanding correctly that essentially, we are saying, your position, the planning commission's, the two of you's position on this, is that all of these colors that are identified by the county are too big and not in the right place?
I think we found like 2 small areas that we were potentially.
Where are those?
Leaving on West Street, Main Street, leaving town, past Cheers on the right-hand side, left-hand side, there were some areas that are,
Does that involve Abbott Farm?
no, it does not involve.
Okay.
Okay, great question.
And we've already talked. to
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Yeah. Where was
Are
it?
they interested in something like this conservation?
You know,
Not to put anybody on the spot.
when I asked one of the Abbott brothers, you know, how often do you get phone calls? All the time. Okay, what are you doing? I got to shop in town. I got to go to the grocery store. I don't want to do it with a bag on my head. You know, those guys grew up there. They don't want to see a large lot subdivision with, you know, national builders throwing down stuff. That's really not good for the tax base. The houses are junk. They're waiting for some, you know, we've begun a discussion with them. You know, obviously, they have their concerns, but if you guys don't send a pipe there, it's only worth $5, and it's a whole lot easier to get funding, to get agricultural or preservation easements money when it's only worth $5 than when it's worth $55 or $75. You guys hold the line on sewer, the values of the property stays, you know, just minor subdivisions, and it's a whole lot easier to get the funding to preserve those properties in perpetuity.
So I'm wondering, I'm sorry, Steve, just real quick. Moving towards the east here, these commercial centers, obviously, I mean, not obviously, generally speaking, commercial in terms of tax.
Yeah, we
Is a better-
think there's no-brainers in some commercial districts for like Route 50.
Okay, I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
That's
It's
what I was
been
wondering
no-brainers.
about.
No, I'm sorry, we're talking about
Yeah.
residential.
Yeah, so that's a
yeah.
perfect little
Those
tech.
are no-brainers. And, but that's, at the same time, we need to say,
Right.
welcome to Berlin. You need to look like Berlin.
Yeah, this is where I think the balance comes into play, right? And it is a big difference between residential and commercial. And those red areas, that's, I mean, personally, I don't know that I would be foreseeing that changed. Because I agree that, you know, we're looking at that balance of property tax revenue versus maintaining what we have. Those areas, you know, if those are familiar, you see with Seahawk Road,
Yeah.
over here on the right, Ocean's East, then
Yeah.
the autos, I think that's right, auto store there.
Right.
You know, that area, to me, because I 100% agree with where Jack was going, you know, that's an area that I would be very open to hearing for annexation, depending on what the, you know, plans are, things
Right,
like that.
right.
And then that little splotch there, right there, south of Route 50, yeah. You know, so I'm happy to hear you guys, I'm glad we talked about that. So I was hoping that, you know, while we're looking to make some changes here, that does the group up here, and again, this is what I hear from planning commission, you all could see that as a potential annexation for commercial.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What
yes.
about the westerly tip that's been discussed before? Right there at the gateway.
It looks great the way it is.
You know it's been a topic of discussion, that's why I'm asking.
I know. I think, and you guys think about it. When you come to Berlin from any direction, isn't the approach to Berlin very important? Like when I come to Berlin, come home to Berlin, okay, I'm home. I feel like I'm home now. This is our place. You know, we're proud of this place. The approach to town is very important, I think, to the citizens and to the property values here. So if we, you know, make it compact and make like those commercial things, hey, we're going to annex you, but here's the deal.
So it's the growth, commercial growth on Route 50 east of the 818 intersection.
In that area around Royal Farms, right?
Mhm.
That-
Mm-hmm.
Do I have that right? That, those little red,
Right.
I mean, that's already, it's already built out.
So what is your take
but
on
not
that?
annexed, right?
What about
It's
the
not
beige,
annexed.
what about the beige growth area that's smack in between?
Between, it looks like it's between
It's
this.
between the
That's the
town.
sports complex fields, right?
Yeah, that's the,
Oh.
well, that's the Harrison.
Proposed.
I think we should call
Don't
it
say that
Harrison
again.
Roberts.
Don't say that.
We
again.
should be future school property. I mean,
That's what it
school's gonna
is.
grow, and we need a place for them to grow. We don't
R1.
need,
We need
we're
our-
already trying to move one school out of town.
Yes,
Are we gonna let that happen?
no,
You can't let it happen to our middle school and our
Wrong
high school
meeting.
either.
Wrong meeting.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
right meeting.
Well, build the bear, that's all I got to say.
you know, when you start making parents mad whose kids go to school in town and walk and bike to school, you're looking for trouble.
All right, so let's make sure I understand question. We got two more to cover in 20 minutes, so I want to make sure that we're on the same page. Planning Commission view is to stop at municipal boundaries. Conservation areas should be created, immediately adjacent parcels converted to those conservation areas. Residential additional is a no. Commercial designation keep, and the commercial growth on Route 50 east of Route 818 to keep. This should be added to that as well. And then, does the mayor and council agree with that summary?
Yes.
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 Okay, let's move to question 3.
Oh.
If not, object.
Sorry.
So,
I think it's-
let's see, so question 3 is, are they consistent with the current and any proposed municipal growth element for Berlin?
Well, now they are, right?
I mean,
Well,
we're
I
changing
think
our
that
current growth areas.
the response to, the areas responded to in question 2 are consistent with what we would like to see. The others.
See question 1 and 2.
Right.
I like that,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, we'll be nice with that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
See above.
Hold on one second. Response.
Good thing this was 6 o'clock and not 9, because see question 2 and 1 and 2.
That'll work.
2. All right, so question 4 is, are there additional areas of focus that we need to work together to address? I think to your comment earlier, Ron, maybe just more consistent dialogue between the county's planning commission and the towns.
I've attempted over the years to get a joint meeting between the Worcester County and the Berlin Planning Commission, and it failed every time.
So how does
They-
that work exactly, Ron? Like, and I'm not trying to speak ill of the county, but, so does that planning commission just kind of anticipate municipal planning people come to their meetings? Or is there like a liaison of some sort to each?
Presently, I think under the direction they are now, they don't, and you may get it just from that letter, is come back to us in 45 days, basically, or we're just gonna do what we want to do.
So then, as a response to question 4, what about saying more consistent dialogue and a request for an annual joint meeting between the Worcester County Planning Commission and the town of
We
Berlin?
would love that.
Worst case, they say no.
Yeah, well,
At least we
you know, we should be on the same page.
What's that?
Yeah, they should.
They really should,
You've
yeah.
been wanting that for years. In fact, Ed Tudor was going
Yeah.
to make that happen.
Exactly.
He retired.
But Ed left, and,
Well, let's see if somebody
That's
can
it.
make it happen. All right, that gets.
well, we have
through our-
conflict, so it's time to talk.
That gets through our questions that we had from Worcester County. Is there anything else that the planning commission or the mayor and council would like to discuss?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm just asking how the comprehensive planning is going. How's it, do you need anything from us? I mean, how's it going?
We've just begun.
Yeah.
We wanted to address the growth element first because as you go through the plan, knowing that our growth philosophy has changed, changes almost everything in the plan.
Right.
So we wanted to determine that amongst ourselves, and then we wanted to come to you and say, hey, are we on the same page? Now we'll go chapter by chapter with in mind. We don't have those growth areas outside anymore. We're bringing them inside. Part of that discussion will be where do we bring them inside? You know, what places should we consider for more
And let
growth?
me know when to come back and talk about stormwater.
And the type of.
That's
growth.
what I really would like to see, Ron. I really would like to see the commission's ideas of the infield growth.
Mhm.
I really would like to see that.
We'll be working on that. We will be.
Ron, I want to ask you about design guidelines. How do you see that process unfolding? What do you want to see happen here?
We need some help. People are coming to us monthly, and we don't have any ammunition.
I think that one of the biggest concerns is that, just like you guys, could be a whole new crop in 2 years.
Yeah.
So if we were to disappear with our current status of how we want things developed, and a different crew comes in, and they're happy with a traditional Royal Farms or Arby's or Wawa, that could be what you get because there is no protocol.
Yeah.
And a protocol protects it.
Yeah.
So the last couple of projects, commercial projects come through, you guys rejected them, you said, we want something better. But you were kind of hesitant to give them specifics on what you usually wanted to see.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
Number one, that's not our job. Number two, it's difficult, as a designer myself, it's difficult to take some of these things that come in front of us and change them in any meaningful way. It's, I like to say you can't put wings on the pig and expect it to fly. Some of these buildings, you can't change them. You can't do anything to them to make them more acceptable.
Right.
They need, they're coming to us thinking that they're just going to do whatever they want to do.
Correct.
And we need to have a document that says, before they come to us, here's what we
Here's what
want.
you need to do.
We need some guidance. It's not up to us, to sit up there. It's not up for a lawyer who's sitting on the commission to give back architectural advice, okay? It goes against everything we're trying to do. We need professional guidance, and
I
it's
agree with
available. It's available.
And
We need funding.
the other side is you have the funding. You
Okay.
have the ARPA funds that were designated by the mayor and council for,
How much is left?
I think $12,000. Don't quote me, but I think
Right.
$12,000.
Yeah, that I can't tell you.
That's not going to get us there.
Well, it's going to get you further than nothing.
No, definitely, yeah. And I think we all realize that's what we need.
No offense.
Right, it isn't Ron and Matt. I thought it was interesting in the microtel conversation. They
Oh, man.
they are coming here with what the brand says this hotel should look like. And it's part of the process is that they need to come before the planning commission and stumble and basically get told to go back to the brand saying, this is not going to fly here. We need to come up with creative designs, right?
Yes.
So then we need to arm you with what those creative designs.
We would prefer that they knew that ahead of time before they even came to us, because it's not fair to them, it's not fair to us, it's not fair to anybody that we go to this battle. Okay, here's what we expect.
Right.
Before you even hire any consultants, this is what we expect. And that way, they're not wasting their time and money.
Yeah.
We're not wasting time or time.
But look what Wawa did. You kicked it back, you said, we want better, and all they did is shift some colors and panels around. It looked the same.
You
So
can't
they
put
weren't getting
rings
the
on the
message.
pig.
What about instead of I think it might take some time to come up with the design standards. But I think you all have been at this long enough that maybe you can come up with what are the 10 or 12 most common questions you get? Or what are the points that you can offer as far as guidance? And we can put some FAQs or something or a handout out so that folks that are interested aren't coming at it with nothing.
When the designers of the Walmart were here, the Wawa were here, last time, we walked out the door together, we went downstairs, out the back door, and they said, well, what is it you want? And I said, look around. Hire someone. There are plenty of professionals who've never been to Berlin before, could spend an afternoon in town and figure out what to do to make it work. But now we're dealing with franchises, and that's difficult with a lot of them.
Yeah.
So, if Wawa doesn't want to do it, we'll wait for somebody that does. What's our hurry?
I think ultimately, though, although that's a great suggestion to make, have the commission come up with 10 or 12 items, but in my view, the point of the standards and the guidelines is so that there isn't a lot of ambiguity and a lot of subjectivity.
Subjectiveness.
Is that a word? Or
Yeah.
subjectiveness. We appoint those folks on the commission, but we should arm them as well,
Yes.
so that they can enforce what we're all, as a community, looking for?
We've been trying to hold the fort down, waiting for ammunition. It's getting tough. We need some help.
We got 12 grand.
Good start.
I think it's 12, don't quote me. We'll get you the exact number, but I think it's 12. The other side of that is we have an interested intern that may pan out for planning with some background, so maybe there's a way that we can assist with that. We'll see what we can do, but I mean, I think that at a minimum, we should be able to come up with some frequently asked questions to at least provide some guidance. It would help. Anything's better than nothing at this moment. So,
Yeah, it is.
all right, anything else while we have each other?
I would love to have you show that video that you discussed earlier on that screen, so everybody can see the
You
reality.
try to find it and I'll try to find it. We'll see
I'll
what-
find it, I'll get it to you.
Oh, I think that would be a great
It's really-
joint meeting that Steve suggested.
It's
Yeah,
a
I think-
really good thing to understand how much different types of development cost tax-wise.
Well, and I think Councilmember Green had brought it up, but I think the whole group really feels that way, that once you have somewhat of a revised comprehensive plan, I think we should sit down again, review that together, maybe a couple-hour work session that doesn't have a hard stop at 7, to be able to give ourselves the opportunity to go through it and see where it goes from there.
I think at some point in the future, there should be a plan looking at a 3 to 5 year plan with the budget in mind and looking at how we need to infill or grow without raising tax rates. Because as I've been
We would
listening,
welcome that.
Yeah.
I know you guys are up against it with the raises,
Yeah.
the development, the requests from everybody.
You have a business that costs goods.
I mean,
It
and
really
not,
is.
I don't, not to harp on it or to go down that road because I could, but I'm not. But even with the infill, I know that certain locations are zoned certain ways and things fit in those categories. But when you think about it, and I'm going right back to Microtel because that doesn't sit well with me. But when I think about that location and the zoning for that spot and the possibility of that coming there and it fits, but does it fit? You know what I'm saying? That's, so when we sit and we think about the infill and the possibility of what goes where, even with zoning and whatnot, I think that the thought needs to be deeper than just the zoning. You know what I'm saying? It needs, I mean, because when they sat here and they said that they had done, you know, their study and they did a traffic study and a this and a that, that doesn't, that, I don't believe that that was done in peak Berlin season. And if it was, there's no way in anybody's right mind, liability-wise, that you would have chosen to put something like that in that location, other than, I mean, of course you're thinking about money, but with all the things that happen right there in that in that section of 113. So when we're talking future about the infill growth, we need to think about those things too, not just filling,
They were
but what
still
makes
looking
sense.
at a highway and not Berlin.
Not Berlin.
Exactly,
Right,
and that's, well, that's what I
right.
said, there's no way that they, when they said, we did a study of Berlin. we
They had a business
literally-
plan, that's what they had.
You really have to look at their motivation.
Right,
Charity, right?
it's a business plan.
And their motivation is really not the well-being of the town of Berlin.
So, I mean, I'm gonna step off my soapbox on that one for today, but it's still, it's on my back, just know that.
I just think a global conversation, figuring out where we're at.
Yes.
Because I'm sure additional revenue in certain areas of Berlin that doesn't affect our resources would be very helpful to everyone involved. But what does that entail?
And I think that you'll see some of that reflected in our FY25 budget. We're still in the early stages of that planning, but we are going to explore the possibility of some studies around impact fees so that folks that are developing can cover some of our costs that we're seeing, and then also a real understanding of what it does cost to add an additional lot or change zoning or something like that.
Part of what we look at lately has been, are they rentals or are they for sale? Just imagine if Oceans East was for sale rather than rentals. Imagine what that would do to the tax base, okay? We need to restrict these massive rental structures that make the owner a lot of money, but cost the town a great deal. We're subsidizing that project.
Or even if it was mixed, you know what I mean? Some.
A certain
Yeah,
amount, we
for
just
sure.
can't have rental. It doesn't bring the revenue in the town to cover the services. It's just that simple. It's simple math, and we need to maybe come up with studies. You know, when someone comes to us, we can't ask them for their projections, but we need to study what happens if this is owner versus renter. What does that do to the coffers of town? That's
what-
where we're going.
What you're saying is that those 200 units are maybe being valued at $100,000 per unit, maybe, and that's their taxable base.
Somebody find out and tell us how much tax we get from Ocean's East a year.
Versus the rental
The lady that could
townhouses.
tell you is not sitting in her spot right there.
Okay, but
She could tell
I
you.
think if I remember back when they proposed it at the annexation hearing, it came up to around $135,000. Imagine if they were.
The original proposal was all of
occupied.
the phases.
No, I don't think that was, I
Yeah,
think that
definitely
was
not all
over
things.
several years, I don't think that was per year.
So, you know, we need to start doing those kind of calculations when it comes up to use.
All right, I want to be cognizant that we start our next meeting in about 5 minutes. Any closing items that we need to put on the radar?
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
If I can just say, I am just, and I speak for others, just very happy to see this mayor and council taking the approach that you are. I think we've all come to the realization that we've got something golden here, and the pressure's on to degrade it. And we just can't allow that to happen for all kinds of reasons, livability, tax purposes. It's really good to see everyone up there looking out for the people in town. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you all do as well. All right, so this will mark the close of our work session, and we'll begin our regular session at 7 o'clock.
Nothing,